All right, here we go. This
Here we
is
go.
officially our launch of signing off. I'm excited to be here, Todd.
It feels good. It feels like I'm putting on my old shoes, so to speak. Here,
Except I can't imagine you're still wearing your fancy pants, new shoes, right? Because I definitely have slippers on and
No,
sweatpants. Full disclosure.
full disclosure. I have socks on right now inside my house. Much more comfortable though.
This is the interview. This is the style that we wanted to do for so long working in news.
Yes, I mean, I don't think we could really curse, but if it does happen, it happens,
It
right?
happens. And we're not going to, hopefully lose our entire careers and end up on YouTube blooper reels.
Yeah, that was the big fear, always.
All right, well, this is signing off. This is our version of interviews, our post news life. But, we miss the interview and talking to people and connecting with people and wanting to hear and share their stories. So we're going to do it our way.
Yeah, and I like where we came to this because we have our own consulting company that we do called HQ, but this is kind of just something we're just doing on the side for fun and just enjoyment because we do miss that part. And we thought, well, what we can do in the world of podcasting when there's thousands upon thousands, everyone you meet on the street, they're like, I have my own podcast. So
so we're gonna do that too. Why
we're
not?
Gonna do that too. So yeah, we're gonna be like, oh, we have our own podcast. But we thought about, well, what would we like to talk about? What would be sustainable? What would be interesting? And we came to this element of change, a major change in someone's life, whether it's personal or professional. Both you and I have gone through that recently, and we all know that, every one of us have gone through it or we've fantasized about it. And so what is it about the change that we regret? What is it that we feared? What is it that we got right? What is the advice we could give to other people? And hopefully we could sort of create this online community of people who can sort of share their stories. And, today, episode 1 is just about an introduction and, saying hello back on social media, as I have not been really too active on social media. Thankfully, I have enjoyed my absence. And then we're going to get into it in the next following episodes.
Yeah, I'm excited to just get back out there and start talking to people. Listen, anyone who's worked remotely or worked on their own company knows it can be a little ice. There are days where Todd and my dog are the only people who I talk to. So, and as much as, Todd, I adore you, and Winston for that matter, it'll be nice to, continue to build our community and hear from people and hopefully get to learn from their insight and have others learn from their insight as well. So
yeah.
It's
yeah,
good,
I mean, I think,
hopefully.
and for a backstory for those of you who might be watching who don't have no idea who the hell we are, both.
What?
Yes,
what do you mean?
Everyone knows who we are. We come from the world of broadcasting, TV news. We were in, combined, what do we say, like almost 40 years experience. So we've been in a while. And Yasmeen and I used to work together at the television station, the ABC station, KTNV in Las Vegas. Shout out to Channel 13. We've been friends since then. When was that? How long ago was that?
I want to say about 8 years, 10 years. Yeah. It's been a while.
It has been a while. I think you throw in the pandemic and the time warp that happened during the pandemic, and it's like, I don't know, it could be 3 years or it could be 8 years. I'm just not
There's
quite
no
sure.
way to know. There's no way to know. It's somewhere in that void of time.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were coming from the world of broadcasting, and then we all, Yasmeen left, 2 years ago, was it roughly?
Yes, it's coming up on 2 years now.
Okay.
Being asleep at night and awake during the day, and it's eating dinner at like a normal human time. It still hasn't gotten old, folks.
No. How dare you eat dinner at a normal time?
It's amazing. It's amazing. There are so many things you take for granted, and I at least at this point I do not take any of those things. Every Sunday I wake up and I'm like, oh no, I don't need to go back to sleep immediately. Todd and I spent a decent amount of our careers on the morning show, which meant going to sleep at 6 p.m. like an infant.
Oof. Or I would split my sleep, which was terrible, by the way.
That's so unhealthy, Todd.
I was like on the way to an early grave. There's no doubt. Some people can do that. I'm not one of those people. And I remember in Philadelphia, I worked night side, so I worked the opposite. So I worked 3 to 12, and occasionally you'd run into people on the morning shift who'd have to come in early, or we were working late, and you strike up a conversation. Oh, hey, how you doing? They always look terrible. They always looked exhausted and sleep deprived. And they would say, like, some of them would say, some people, hey, it works with their lifestyle. It's great and good for them. But a lot of people, I used to remember
Who have you
talking
met
to.
who enjoyed that more? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm gonna call you out right now, Todd.
Some
Name
people,
names.
like, it works for them. Like, it work. Like, I don't know how. I don't know really. I can't identify with those
If you
people.
are one of those people, email us. We want to talk to you on the podcast.
Yeah, that's
How did
true.
you make it work?
Because no human being should be getting up at 1:50,
2,
2 a.m.
1:30.
every day. So yeah, I used to run into those people all the time, right? And I was like, "How you doing?" They just say, "Oh, this shift is killing me," and I just thought, kind of stop your whining. But then, but then when
Sounds
you
like a
get on
true
that
night
shift,
sider.
yeah, the night side is the right side, as you used to always say. Yeah, and then when you get on that shift, and then you go through it, and you're like, "Oh my god, this shift is killing me." I mean, literally, I feel like I've aged, twice or three times the rate than normal.
And you know what's funny? I've encountered, I'm sure you've had similar stories when you meet people who don't know the news business, they think we get into the newsroom right before. First of all, I don't even think a lot of people know we are on the air at 4 a.m. or 4:30 in the morning.
Oh,
I don't know who we're doing those shows for. Our
yeah, I don't know.
moms.
And it's so funny too, not being out of news, right? I'm like, there's news on at 4 a.m. What? My God, why?
But I have found a lot of people are like, oh, well, do you get in at like 6 a.m.? Like, we've been on the air for 2 hours at that point, folks. They don't know all the weird things that go on behind the scenes to make the magic happen.
Yeah, and so it's funny. So that gets back to, like, why I think this podcast and what we're doing is so of interest to us, because I don't want to call it a prison, because it wasn't. We were there. We were there by our own
I'm
choosing.
not going
The,
to call it
the
that.
TV industry was very good to
No,
us, and I
listen,
am.
I love news to this
Yes,
day. We're still very nerdy or geeky or whatever the
yeah,
correct word is. We're very much like, did you read this on NPR this morning? Let's talk about it. And we'll
right.
get derailed very quickly.
Yes, yeah. We love it, and we are respectful of our time in it, and we're not here to trash it. But in the context of what we're doing now, it is funny how, when you're in something and you feel stuck, and you feel like, I have run my race here, and I got to figure out what's my exit plan, and getting yourself out of that is, it's easy to fantasize, right? It's easy to be like, oh, I could do that, I could do this. But then when you really start to lay the groundwork of making that change and signing off and figuring out the logistics of it, you're like, holy hell, it takes too much energy to leave.
I mean, and the amount of things you don't know. I know it's such a cliche, but for example, in news, we didn't really use Outlook. Or I mean, email was basically just a fancy version of text messages. It would
Yeah,
be one or two words. And now we're learning how to use Microsoft Docs and slides. And there's just so many things that we had no idea about. And you don't think about those things when you're
no.
fantasizing about quitting. You're like, I'm going to start my own company. You're like, wait, it's we need
Yeah,
to learn a couple of things first.
yeah, or when you would talk to people in this space, in the business world, and they're throwing out language and verbiage that we're like, I have no idea what you're talking about at first, because
But we're nodding and like quickly
yes,
Googling on the
like,
second
oh
screen. Yes, yes,
yes,
yes.
uh-huh,
Obviously.
that
SEO
is correct.
that
Yes,
we used. But you know what the thing is? I remember also walking into the first newsroom I ever walked into, Fox 10 in Phoenix, and someone said VOSOT. I remember specifically, it was, hey, I need you to write a VOSOT. And the sheer panic that like overcame my entire body because I didn't know what it was. Everyone was talking to me like I knew what it was. I'm like, how do I ask? VOSOT is also not the easiest thing to Google because it's very specific. It's
yeah,
voiceover and a soundbite. Just
right.
for those of you who don't know the random news acronym that I just threw out very obnoxiously, but it was. I remember being terrified and and not knowing what that was. And now I feel like I experience that daily
Yeah.
running our own company.
Right. But it's nice though you have that experience in life to kind of revert back to and kind of remember that to kind of re-energize you in this new phase. Because especially for us, when we left during mornings, we're thinking, oh, we're going to get so much more energy. It's going to be blah, blah, blah. But then when you run into a new career or a new aspect of your life and almost everything that you're doing is brand new again, it is exhausting. You
And
know, it's
humbling.
it's exhausting and humbling in a much different way where you're like, oh, but wait a minute, I got to sleep in till 6 or 6:30. I should be full of energy. But when you realize like, oh, wait a minute, I got to learn about this. We got to learn how to transfer these documents. We got to learn how to create an LLC and make sure that we have legal protection. And now we got to worry about tax implications. On and on and on. Every step of the way, it's like, man, it is that challenge. And so, but those are the things like when you go through the change, there's no way you might be able to anticipate some of it, but you obviously don't know how to fully prepare for it until you're in it.
I mean, really, it's learning to build the plane while you're flying the plane, because
Yeah,
no matter, I think, how much, at least I'll speak for ourselves, for myself, and maybe I'll speak for you as well.
probably.
You don't even know until you're, oh, is it an LLC? Is it a partnership? Is it, I don't know. Let's Google this. And it's been something, but really energizing, I would say,
Yeah.
because listen, let's be honest, at a certain point in news, for the most part, you cover crime, you cover sports, you cover weather, and there's a little bit of a routine once you've been doing it for as long as we've been doing it. And now every day is very different. And there are lots of things, to learn and fix. And yeah, it's definitely, it's a whole new world.
It's a whole new world. And I think one of the things that we learned that we can sort of pass along is sort of this initial signing off is, you know, lean heavily on the people in your network, right? Because as we did, whether it was our friends or family or friends of friends, neighbors or friends, whoever it was that had an expertise in anything that we had a question with, like with the LLC, and we talked to friends who started their own businesses, and they said, okay, well, here's the difference between an LLC and and this is what's good, this is what's bad, this is why you guys should do this. So that was really for us. That was huge. That was everything, right? And leaning in on that
Everything.
network outside of kind of the network that we were in the news world was beneficial and remains extraordinarily beneficial to this day.
And I mean, I remember initially when we started reaching out to people who were in our consulting communication space, and being a little hesitant because I didn't want them to think we were stepping on their toes or any sort of competition. Listen, the news business is very competitive. Let's just call that what it is. It is very competitive. Obviously, we've formed lots of very, very close friendships, but at its core, you're a one-man band. You're in it for yourself. And everyone who we've reached out to in this business world, in this communication space, has been so exceedingly kind and generous with their knowledge, with their connections. It's been, I mean, really, that would be I think the biggest advice that I would have is reach out to as many people as possible, because people are, at least our experience has been, people have been so kind and helpful to a point that, I mean, will forever be indebted to them for
Yeah,
no
no,
reason. For
yeah,
no
no, and
reason they
that's
had to help us.
and we talk about that too with any kind of change in your life, right? And that's part of the fear I think that many people probably kind of face is like, okay, now that I'm here in this new space in the context of what we're talking about, this is obviously a professional change, is that, who do I seek for help? And it's just amazing that all you got to do is pick up the phone, send that email. And our experience has been people have been extraordinarily helpful in mentoring us, giving us suggestions. We're like, oh, we felt like, oh man, we felt so fortunate because it just coming in the world that we're coming from. If we're at Channel 13 in Las Vegas, we're not calling necessarily, our counterparts at the CBS or Fox stations, although there are friendships and those sort of things happen. But I'm just saying, and in general, we're not sort of out of the blue sending them an email about, hey, how do you handle this situation? Um, in
Or,
in
"Hey,
this.
here's a great story idea." That
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
happen.
yeah,
I'm not gonna give another reporter a story
yeah,
idea. That's just not a
yeah.
thing.
So and it took a little bit to trust that, right? When people were telling us you got to expand your network, you got to lean into that. We're like, well, what does that mean? And we don't, we of course, don't want to be a burden.
Yeah, am
But
I
it's amazing.
bothering you? Is that weird? And yeah, that's totally true. We were definitely hesitant to start reaching out to people for that
Yeah,
reason. I don't wanna be a burden.
and it's a lot. Like when we talk about that, like when you make that transformation from sort of fantasizing about a change and signing off to actually beginning to build that roadmap, one of the initial obstacles that I know I ran into is, literally looking at a piece of paper and trying to write down a step plan was just, it kind of blew me away because I said, oh, all right, what's step one? What do I do? How do I make this happen? And that's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to this, because I know there are things about signing off and changing careers, changing professions, changing things in our professional lives and personal lives that I have yet to learn. And so, I want to learn from others who have gone through it, years ago, or maybe even someone who's going through it currently. And hopefully it becomes a teaching moment for all of us.
Yes, and I think fairly early on, Todd, you wrote on one of our blank pieces of paper. We have so many folks. This is advice I would not give you. We have like Post-its and handwritten notes
That's
everywhere.
terrible. I still have my reporter notebook. Like, it's awful.
Get a computer or learn how to use Google Docs. We're still trying to do that. But on one of these pieces of paper or Post-its, Todd wrote down, there is no your first draft is always going to be bad. Well, what is it
Yeah.
exactly?
Yeah. Well, I think it's to drop the first curse word is like, it is from an author who I can't remember, and perhaps I'll find it and put in the show notes. Who I heard on the Tim Ferriss podcast, who I'm a big fan of. She said your first draft is always gonna suck, you know, and that was true. And so I
It's
think that's
comforting.
very
It's
comforting.
comforting.
Very comforting. So like your first time you ever gonna do something, maybe the first time with this podcast, people are like, you guys suck. But that's okay. It's a process, and you just got to kind of just do it and make the adjustments as you go, and don't be afraid that your first draft is gonna suck. You're not gonna write the great American novel on the first try. You're not gonna come up with the best business plan. You're not, on the first try. You're not going to be Elon Musk on the first try, and you don't have to be. It's just get out, do it, make the mistakes that you need to that you need to make, and learn from it. Right? I think, stumble forward the best way you can.
And on that note, I guess this is going to be our sucky podcast for the first episode. This is our first one. We promise we will get better. Hopefully with lots of really interesting guests and hearing all of your stories and advice, and we're here to learn too.
Yeah, and it's not going to be the Todd and Yasmeen podcast, but we also thought as a structure going forward, we wanted this first introduction podcast just to kind of get out there. Then we figure, like, if we're gonna talk the talk, we better walk the walk. So we don't want to ask guests and people to come on to share their stories without us going first. So our next episode number 2 is going to be talking about Yasmeen and your signing off moment, and what was that like, and your fears, regrets, and concerns, and what you got right, and what you learned, and the advice you'd like to pass along to everyone else.
Buckle up. That was a good
Buckle
tease, Todd.
buckle up. Let's go.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much for listening to our first podcast. We are so excited to be here and talking and connecting with people again. And we can't wait to hear from you more and learn and grow with all of you.
All right. Let's go.